This is season 2.
I hope this season brings a little sponsorship so I can get better internet.
We have a special guest today.
My name is Shloka. I am an aerospace engineer. Growing up, I used to watch rocket launches with my grandfather. Wherever I would find paper, I would just build paper planes. Loved fighter jets. If I'm not able to fly, might as well understand how it works. I would read books about Navy or Stokes. I did not understand the nuances of it.
None of us also understand Navia stocks properly. Don't worry.
We all come from different backgrounds. Still, there is this pathway that all of us take. We all end up in the same place. Others might call us crazy.
It's a special breed of people who choose that.
As the resident anime and gaming expert, I need to ask, have you played any games related to aerospace?
I've played a few games through simulators for sure. Entire aerospace industry is so small in India. That's the reality of it. I couldn't score high enough to get into the aerospace IIT institutions. I took it on my mind, like I don't care. I'm going to work twice as hard and I'm still going to make some contribution into this industry.
You might face setbacks, but it is how you deal with it. It is how you come back and move forward with this.
I wanted to join a bigger organization like DRDO or ISRO. When I saw the kind of compensations, you realize you cannot move to a city like Bangalore with those compensations. If you want to keep your talent, that needs work in India for sure. Staying at a startup, I was writing proposals, manufacturing design work, deployments, being able to recruit people. I realized I need to take this plunge. There was no female founder in the drone industry in India. Initially, when we started out, you don't have funding. You don't know even if you're going to make revenue doing what you do. We were exploring different avenues. There was this one gap of drone workshops. You see a drone flying and you feel, oh, it's just like driving a remote control car. That you don't need any rules for it, but that's not true.
How did you end up in the US?
It was more along the lines of getting guidance, of running the startup, specifically United States, because this is the place where startups are born. Cornell is in upstate New York. You're forced to work rather than be distracted by the city noise. Cornell has one of the oldest engineering programs. A lot of entrepreneurship focus happens here. The first women PhD was from Cornell.
With this H1B process, how do you think you see your future?
It's not just in the United States. I realize it's everywhere. There are challenges and difficulties everywhere. We just got the verdict with regards to H1B. Somebody who's on F1 don't have to incur that cost for companies, and probably things would get easier for people entirely. If you don't get opportunities, create your own, ultimately.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Ground Control to Major Nerds. Actually, this is season 2, episode 1. So if you guys have, been following us for so long, welcome back. Welcome back to season 2. My name is Shrikant Chityala. I'm an avionics systems engineer and system architect. And with me, I have my constant co-hosts, Ashwini and Parvesh. And also we have a special guest today, Shloka. So we'll be talking to her about her journey through her master's in the US, her life in aerospace, and also discussing a few things about how aerospace engineering and aerospace careers can go. So yeah, with that being said, I'm really excited for this episode, and over to you, Ashwini. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Feels great to be renewed for another season, right? I hope this season also brings a little bit sponsorship so I can get better internet.
Wow. Okay.
And yeah, exciting time. Just been eating a bunch of sweets post Diwali.
Hmm.
Good times.
What about the weekend, dude? Wasn't it a happy weekend in general?
It was really excited to see the football team I support finally start winning again. And
Yeah, we're not going to say the name because you don't want to jinx it. Yeah.
Exactly. And more importantly, I also had the opportunity to attend the Global Safety Summit that was organized by the Aeronautical Society of India in Mumbai. And it was a really interesting event that was attended by a bunch of very big industry players. We obviously had presence from HAL, a few airline operators, engineering companies. And there was a really interesting technical panel that was put on with concerns regarding global safety. And it was a really fun event to attend, and I learned a lot from there.
Okay. For our new viewers, Ashwini, do you want to give a background of yourself for season 2, like who you are, what you're doing so far, and what's your journey so far for aerospace?
Sure. So I am a mechanical and aerospace engineer. I did my bachelor's in mechanical engineering from here in Mumbai. And then I was in the US where I pursued my master's in aerospace engineering. I was briefly working in the US in R&D with the university I graduated out of. And then I moved back to Mumbai and I started working in the aerospace industry here. I currently work as a lead engineer at a defense manufacturing company that's based out of Mumbai, where we specialize in the R&D and manufacturing as well as service providing for drones and counter drones, but we are also into niche projects such as satellite and missile designing. So, yeah, I have a lot of fun just working on some really cool niche projects. And I also have an opportunity to regularly communicate and visit our primary customers, which is in the Indian Defense, in the Indian Army, the Indian Navy, and the Indian Air Force.
All right. So moving on to Parvesh. How is it? How is it going?
Pretty good. The job's been going great. I've been traveling back and forth to Chennai,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, I'm having fun. Between season 1 and season 2, there have been some changes for me. I switched jobs. So right now my designation is Decision Intelligence Senior Analyst. My main work is I work as a business analyst who decides where we can do AI optimization and how you can optimize a value stream. Along with that, just general analytics. But I did do aerospace engineering and mechanical engineering. So yeah, I'm also the resident anime and gaming nerd in this podcast.
So, Shrikant, you have to let us know about yourself as well, right?
Oh, okay. Myself and my journey. I think I left home when I was 18. I did my aerospace engineering from University of Hertfordshire. I was predominantly mostly into systems engineering more than aerospace engineering, but aerospace systems engineering in general. Then I quickly realized once I graduated that I need some expertise in electrical and computer engineering. So I did my master's in electrical and computer engineering. So for that, I came to the US. I came to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach. That's where I met these two co-hosts of mine, Ashwini and Parvesh. And we had a good 2.5 years together at the college. And I was fortunate enough to get a break. My first job being at Gulfstream Aerospace. So I was a systems engineer, system integrator for the advanced aircraft program for the G500, 600 aircrafts. From there on, I decided that I think I had enough experience on the aircraft side, so I went towards the product side. So I joined Collins Aerospace, and I worked for the surveillance department, which does the traffic products, which is the traffic collision avoidance systems and the transponder systems. So from there on, I joined Hughes Network Systems to be the system architect for their Hughes in-flight connectivity. So that's what I do right now. So that's my background.
It sounds very cool. And trust me,
This
to
is
anyone who's listening in, it is actually that cool. Uh, and
this is just 10 years of
okay,
experience, though.
let's just, he says
It's just
humbly.
10 years. Yeah.
Okay, let's concentrate on our guest today.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Let's introduce our guest on the show for the first time. Shloka, how you doing?
Well, thank you for having me. So,
Yeah, if you could tell
I
us
had to
something about
introduce
yourself.
myself,
Yeah, please. Yeah, go ahead.
So, my name is Shloka. I am an aerospace engineer as well. I was in India for my aerospace engineering. Did that, worked at e-commerce, realized that I wanted to go back into the industry. So, started working as a design engineer for the same startup where I met Ashwini. We were working into anti-drone systems, working on different projects which were related to Indian defense. And after that, I realized that I wanted to, progress more into the industry. So ended up becoming a founding member of a startup in the drone industry itself, in India. So while I was doing that, I started realizing that I wanted to expand my network more, understand how startups really function around the world. And that sort of brought me to the United States, because ultimately you see startups growing from here. And I wanted to see how I can bring that knowledge back to India in a way, and at the same time learn from here and, sort of put that into perspective. And that's what brought me to the United States. So right now I am in upstate New York, and it's starting to get really cold here.
Nice.
Shloka, it's really nice to have you on. Of course, we've known each other for a while now, and I really wanted you to come in here today because a lot of our listeners are younger uh, people who are just who have just finished their graduation, who are just looking at possibly going for a postgrad. Or they've just finished their postgrad, they're just entering the job market. So it felt like it would be a nice conversation to have with someone who is currently going through that, and not someone who's been in the industry for like the last 10-15 years like us. And so it's really nice. Thank you for coming in. But before we get to what you're currently doing, I want to sort of roll back to what made you choose aerospace engineering. How did you get into it?
When I was growing up, I used to watch rocket launches with my grandfather on Doordarshan. I distinctly remember in 2005 we had like 2 PSLV launches which happened, and I remember seeing those. At the same time, I used to also build paper planes. Wherever I would find paper, I would just build paper planes. I really loved the flight of fighter jets. I always felt that I wanted to fly that, because generally people are curious about cars, people are curious and they love driving because of the speed of it. And I thought this is faster than cars. So I really want to fly this someday. But as I started growing, I realized that I wouldn't fit the physical requirements that are there. So that sort of bumped me, but I thought, okay, let's see what happens. So after 10th, I decided I want to pursue aerospace engineering. If I'm not able to fly a plane, might as well understand how it works. And the curiosity was something that sort of brought me into the industry and why I wanted to pursue it. I would still read books about relativity, about Navier-Stokes. Although I did not understand the nuances of it, but I would read it just to understand what exactly is this field about.
None of
And
us also understand Navier-Stokes properly. No worry.
You
yeah,
don't
exactly.
understand it. I'm joking. I also don't understand it. I'm joking. I'm joking. Sorry.
Precisely. Then in India, if you're trying to look at engineering, you have to go through this level called JEE. I think every person who has gone through this phase knows what exactly I'm talking about.
We might be living completely different lives, but we all have that moment of interest where a satellite launch is what really excites us. I mean, I'm sure all of us can picture all of us as kids or as young adults when we saw that live satellite launch on Doordarshan, or the first time we came across a book that taught you how to design paper planes. So I'm glad that even though we all come from different backgrounds and we are all of different ages, there is this pathway that all of us take, and we all end up in the same place. And others might call us crazy because
It's a
aerospace isn't exactly, like you said, it's not rocket science,
it's a
right?
special
So
breed of
It
people who
is.
choose that. So it's just a
But
different
it
breed of
is
people that
rocket
you.
science.
Yeah,
that's the t-shirt. It's not rocket science, but it is. So
Like,
it's really nice to hear that. Please go ahead, Shloka. From your JEE, what happened?
Oh,
so,
before you start,
yep.
yeah, as the resident anime and gaming expert, I need to ask: have you played any games related to uh, aerospace, or watched any anime, cartoons, anything?
Not really a anime fan, let's say. I was introduced to anime during engineering times. So I've watched a few of them, but nothing related to aerospace specific. But yes, I've done, like, I've flown those laptop based, you have those simulators, and I've flown
Yeah.
that. So I would treat it as a game, but it's a simulator. I would say yes. I've played a few games through simulators for sure.
Also, tell us what your favorite subject was during your engineering.
So my favorite subject during engineering was actually aerodynamics, and like that place, that was the time when I realized that aerodynamics is not just one subject but the branches that it shows. It sort of links you to turbulence, which is again something that we all experience during flights and hate it, of course. But the entire phenomenon of it, how that sort of links to Navier-Stokes as well. So these were the technicalities which I discovered through aerodynamics. There was compressible, incompressible part. There was industrial applications of aerodynamics. So honestly, like entire aerospace industry is considered a niche, because as Ashwini rightly pointed out before, that people don't pursue, like people have to be actually crazy to pursue it, because like you have to create your own opportunities in it. So either you are very curious about what this industry is about, or either you have to be just like, this is super cool that I want to pursue it. So it just, there are only two motivators in the entire industry to actually pursue it. That was one subject which I truly loved. But if I go back like to JEE and the entire experience of it, yes, it was a, let's be honest, back then at least you could just give like once a year the exam would happen. Either you float through it, or you end up thinking that you wasted 2 years of your life.
Or
And
4 in some
that's how
cases.
yeah. And for me personally, I just gave 3 exams. So three, I would say four actually. So mains, advance, then I gave an exam for SRM, which is a private institution, and I gave the entire state level CETs. During that phase, I made it through mains, I made it through advance, but after advance, because I was so hellbound that I wanted to do aerospace engineering no matter what happens, no matter what, I couldn't score high enough to get into any of the aerospace IIT institutions. So entire aerospace industry is like, it is niche, but then at the same time it is so small in India that there are barely any institutions you can pursue it through. So either there are like 2 3 IITs, you like the major IITs which give you that opportunity. The newer ones don't have it yet, or private institutions which you can go to. State institutions are very rare also, in some cases, where you can pursue aerospace. It's growing now, but that's the reality of it. I couldn't get into the top ones, and I knew that I wouldn't be able to pursue the entire aerospace industry through IITs. So I took it on my mind. I'm like, I don't care. I'm going wherever my path takes me. I'm going to work twice as hard as anybody would. And I'm still going to like make some contribution into this industry and try to do that. So that's what took me to SRM, and that's what sort of took me to Chennai.
It's a very interesting thing you said, that even though you face rejection, it's that is what separates us from uh, people who give up on this field. That you might face setbacks, you might face rejections, but it is how you deal with it. It is how you come back, and how you move forward with this. So that it's great to hear that this is something you've done from such a young age. Again, please tell us, what was your experience at SRM like?
Yes. So just like Shri, I left house when I was about, let's say, 17 years old. Entirely a different state altogether. I was not a Tamil native speaker at all. So it was more like using sign languages and try to communicate to local people at least. So SRM, again, huge campus. Their aerospace program back then was at least like 25 years old. So pretty great place to be. And one thing I would always recommend to people is definitely go out of your houses and definitely pursue your career in a place where you don't know anybody, because that sort of gives you this leverage wherein you are trying to learn things. In your house you're in this comfort zone, and you just have everything at hand. You just speak out and somebody or the other would help you out. But when you go on a foreign territory where you don't know anybody, it sort of makes you learn things. It makes you have to speak to other people, or else your things are not going to get done. You have to make friends, you have to make connections, you have to build your network, you have to navigate through bureaucracy. So that's what sort of set me up for to learn a lot of things there. I was just on the campus and I realized I saw this poster which said Drone Research Lab. And sort of that instantly clicked. I was like, because back then drone research was not really a huge thing in India. There was hardly any traction with regards to drone. It was very, very foreign to people. And I thought, why not? So I just went ahead, sort of enrolled myself into it. They had a proper interview process for it as well. So I had to, sort of learn about four forces and understand what was drag, what was lift. And it was very new to me. So I hadn't thought of these things before, but they made me think about it. They made me study those small, tiny details. And that during that phase, that's when I was introduced to drones really, and how the real new nuances of aerospace in general.
Great. So, so did you like get projects at SRM to actually like enhance your drone skills, or was it like it was just like you were shadowing something and then like trying to just get your first introduction to drones over there? Like,
So the lab was basically majorly all students. So we would work on our own projects, and I was exposed to about, let's say, about 4 to 5 different projects per year. So in 4 years it was like a huge portfolio of different types of drones. So we worked on fixed wing, and I think those are more difficult to replicate as compared to fixed as compared to quadcopters or any kind of copter, let's say,
got it.
because you're building a mini aeroplane
Mhm,
in
mhm.
in the context of it.
Cool. Yeah. I did something similar in my final year as well at UK. So we were doing fixed wing drones as our final year project. But yeah, that's different from having a drone research lab, I guess. We never had that. But yeah, that's interesting.
Studying and working on projects in a lab in a college to then working at an actual R&D company that worked on drone projects which were going to have professional usage for the Indian defense, and then to then actually make your own startup in the same field. What was that journey like, and what was your experience throughout those stages?
So through that lab, I realized how much I enjoyed this new field, because I realized I could master something which not many people know about in the 4 year span. There, you sort of understand how to build proposals, how to actually design a drone from scratch. That's where I was also introduced to aerodynamics, and I enjoyed it to like my heart's content, be using it on software or just framing the equations out there. Experience sort of made me understand how to get through this entire, like, what is it that I really want to pursue. I wanted to join a bigger organization like maybe DRDO or ISRO. So I was looking at those opportunities. I was giving those exams as well in process. But when I saw the kind of compensations that you get, you realize the reality snaps. You snap into the reality where you realize you cannot move to a city like Bangalore with those kind of compensations. So that's when reality strikes in, and you realize that the entire aerospace industry needs to start compensating more so that engineers would want to work in it, and engineers stay. They deserve to be compensated for their work, because yes, out of passion, each and every one of us works into the industry. But at the same time, if you want to sustain and if you want to keep your talent, that is one place which needs work in India for sure. So I tried working at e-commerce. I thought, let's see how this goes. That experience sort of helped me understand how to manage bigger teams. It was not necessarily related to aerospace in that phase, but that experience taught me how to put out fires. Because when you're a manager, you're not necessarily building anything, but you're putting out fires constantly, just so that the business does not burn down. So um did that for 6 months while I was still in the last semester. So that was a crazy phase personally, because I would work full time, come home at night by 11 p.m., then start working on my thesis, because again I have to graduate at that point. And that's when I realized I want to go back to the field I come from. Transitioning from there, I sort of had a senior I realized who was working already in a startup space. I wanted to work in a startup space because there is no bureaucracy as such, as long as you are able to maintain that team relation. And drone was something that I was doing already for 4 years. So I just contacted that senior saying, hey, I realize you're working there. Is there any opening there? Um, he told me, yes, there is, and we are looking for a design engineer. And that's exactly the drone tech company which Ashwini mentioned about as well, where we met. There, when I first started, they needed a few solutions regarding delivery processes and how we can build different design mechanisms. I was back to the drawing board here. You use softwares like SolidWorks, CATIA. These are very common softwares that are there in the industry. You try to run CFD analysis, and I was back to the core. That team, even in that team, when I just joined, I realized I was the only female engineer within different 5, 6 male engineers who were out there. So as you see this challenge everywhere in engineering throughout India, where you see there is a ratio gap. So there is a diversity gap there. Even when I was in SRM, we barely had 20 female candidates as compared to the entire class strength of about having 80 to 100 people. So when I was in a team where it was like there was a huge gender parity, um you sort of start like putting out your opinions more. You sort of create this narration around team as well, that I want to be heard. There were times when I would personally just put out my hand saying I want to do the field work. And that, again, that also sort of puts it out that there is no difference there, where I can do the field work as well. If it's heat, if it's like, even if it's heat, even if it's cold, I can sustain that and I can still work efficiently as all the other members on the team. So that's also one way to look about it. And I was also personally working with Aeronautical Society of India, wherein I was acting as a drone mentor there. I would personally visit different schools and colleges with the president of the organization, the chairman of the organization. They would talk about aeronautical field, aerospace field in general, and I would also put out how the industry functions with regards to women, with regards to drone industry in general. So I was also personally looking out on different fronts for the industry to promote how women can walk into the industry.
Got it. So
I can attest to the fact that even today, people who are in the organization when Shloka was working and they're still at the organization, there is still a discussion where they go, we had this one engineer who had zero complaints, and come day or night, irrespective of what environment we are heading out to, what sort of work we're doing, she would always be the first one to say, yes, I'm in. And we would often have to be like, no, you've done enough. It's time you go home. You also have to get some rest. So I there are very fond memories of Shloka working with us, and I can completely attest to that. Having said that, there was a time when you decided that it's time for you to move on from working under someone and then having something of your own. What was that process like? How was it to move on from the security of getting paid monthly to then going into this market where you are hiring people, you are the person who's financially responsible, you have a fiduciary responsibility to others? What was that transition like?
When you work at any startup, even as an employee, you are putting out multiple hats. You're not just doing one specific task, you are always doing something or the other, be it right. So during that phase, I was writing proposals, I was doing manufacturing work, design work. I was also into deployments, which was happening. I also got an experience of being able to recruit people. After a year of working in at the startup, I was fortunate enough to go to SRM to recruit somebody. And that it felt amazing, of course, because you are going back to the same place in full circle motion where you actually started your journey from. So I went there, I met my professors, and well, they were happy to see me in these shoes where I was sort of recruiting someone rather than be recruited from. So when I saw my entire journey, I realized I was already doing a lot of things which I can probably do on my own as well. At the same time, I had a few ideas which I felt I wanted to pursue more. So I realized, okay, I need to take this plunge. Yes, it is scary, of course, because you realize from earning to don't know if you're ever going to get a salary or not, or sort of putting in and crunching in your savings. It was a scary move, but I thought it was time wherein I take that leap forward. So left the organization. Already had someone of a colleague from before who was thinking of doing it. So we started doing this together. Initially, I when I looked at the entire industry, I realized there was no female founder in the drone industry itself who had taken this plunge to even have a startup in India. So, yes, there was sort of a presentation there as well. Initially, when we started out, of course, you don't have, when you're a new organization, you don't have funding. You don't know if even if you're going to make revenue doing what you do. So we were exploring different avenues, and this industry itself was so tiny in India. Right now, at least it's starting to hit $1 billion overall. But back then, it was barely what in a few $1 million, I would say. And if you're thinking about the entire industry, that's nothing as a revenue stream if you're starting a business there. So then we were exploring different avenues. Me and the person who I was as working as a co-founding member with. Then we hit on to this one space wherein we realized that there is nobody who is sort of doing workshops for drones. We saw that because I was already visiting different schools and colleges giving talks, I realized there were a lot of curious people who wanted to learn more about the industry, but because it was like highly unregulated, we just had a few set of rules to follow, but it was still unregulated. It was still coming into regulation. And at the same time, there were no like hands-on resources for it. You would still find one or two courses online, but you see that those courses went hands-on for you to actually learn. And as somebody from engineering, you always want to do something hands-on. um so we realized there was this one gap of drone workshops which we can fulfill. At the same time, during that phase, there was a lot of drone academies which were coming up, who would give you licenses as drone pilots. But at the same time, they were super expensive. So not everybody would be able to pursue those. So what we did was we started these like conducting these drone workshops. I personally also had a network where I knew people from different schools who I can reach out to and pitch this to. We started doing those, and we were getting a great response out of it. So we realized this is something that we can definitely go ahead with. We would go to those schools, teach them about the rules that are prevalent that they need to follow. And it is, to a large extent, it is a surprise that nobody knows about those rules, right? You see a drone flying and you feel like, oh, it's just like driving a remote control car, that you don't need any rules for it. But that's not true. Because there is a hazard which can be caused, or there is a invasion of privacy which can happen through drones. um you need to know about those rules. You also, like, for flying as well, it's not like as easy or as intuitive as flying a like driving a remote control car. So being able to understand what the controls are, and so we started teaching those things to people started assembling their own drones, and it sort of like evolved as an idea there. So that's how we understood there is a revenue here, and that's how we went forward with it.
I like how two things that you mentioned, and I, for any listeners out there who are looking to explore this place, what a big takeaway here is that if you are working in an MSME, a micro, small, mini sort of enterprise or a startup, there are multi faceted roles that you will have, and there will be a lot of processes that you will pick up. Which will enable you to then go on, and if you have this dream of making of having your own startup, I feel like startups are a great place to learn how what a startup is. And like every engineer working at a startup, you know exactly what is being done wrong, so you sort of are like, this is something, when I start my own company, this is not how things will happen. So it is a great learning experience. And the second most important thing is that you identified a gap in the industry where you know that drones were already flying. There was a lot of manufacturing work being done, but the masses were not exactly educated in the rules and regulations. And so, being able to get into this drone education sector, where you also have a market, but you're also essentially providing valuable service to the masses, and especially to a young workforce that is interested in this new, fascinating, shiny field. I feel like that is a very good problem sort of identification, and then that obviously gets you the money to then pitch for better stuff, for more verticals, and then eventually grow your organization. So I feel like that is a very good way to move forward. And for any potential startup founders, this is a great way to move forward, where problem identification is one thing, problem solution is one thing, and that is how you monetize something, rather than just looking at, I want to start my own company, how should I get revenue?
Yeah.
For sure.
I guess those are great points, but let's just like come back to this startup because that's a whole topic to talk about. But let's just continue on with the journey. So, uh, you got your first job in drones, and then the drone industry. You worked with Ashwini there. You then figured out a way to find a path forward to open your own drone company, and then you went through that. So, what was the next thing that you did after that? Like, how did you end up in the US?
So during my entire startup phase, I realized that personally, I still there was a gap in my learning where I wanted to learn more about how startups function, because I did not have any mentorship or any experience there in terms of startup itself. And in India, it is very, like back then at least, like 3-4 years back, it was even difficult because startup was not a thing.
Mhm.
People were scared, and at the same time, you make a lot of mistakes and you realize, okay, I probably need a bit more guidance in this space. So
So when
I
so just to like give it a little bit more context, right? So when you say guidance in the sense of like operating the startup, or like just in terms of the technical, like improvements of the product itself, or like overall everything, you mean like in terms of like guidance? Because like I think that is something which I also face even with a decade of experience sometimes, right? So just wanted to know that perspective of that.
it was more along the lines of getting guidance in terms of running the startup
Mhm.
rather than the technicalities,
Okay.
because technicalities are something which you can still figure out on the go, but running the startup itself,
Mhm.
because there I feel this is very underrated, where people feel if you have a startup you don't need any mentorship already, but that is very incorrect. I feel in any life, in any role, you do need mentors and you need mentorship, so you need to seek that guidance from people. Okay, because there's always someone who might have a solution for you, and it is sort of underrated because people feel if I tell somebody about this idea they might steal it, which
Hmm.
is so untrue.
Cool. Yeah. That's another mentality thing that I think exists in in this industry, especially because it's so niche. People want to keep hold of their ideas close to their chest. So yeah, I do understand, and I do recognize that you had that issue there. So it's common. So yeah. So what was the thing that you started then thinking about to get more guidance or get yourself more educated?
So I just had a few ideas in mind wherein thought, okay, this might be a good segue for me to, pursue my masters, and specifically United States, because this is the place where startups are born out of. like you have the entire Silicon Valley as an example. I wanted to also learn from the entire mindset of people. What's the mindset here that people have? And also, because it is more like I wanted to see how far I can go here, and I also was sort of comparing in terms of, is the corporate culture in the or the entire industry similar when you see United States versus when you compare India. So I was very curious on that front, and I started applying. I was just applying. I applied to probably just 4 places. I was constantly, like, back then I used to discuss this with Ashwini as well. Like how I see it as going ahead, and I just applied. I thought, let's see what happens.
What were the 4 places, if I may ask?
So it was Stanford, Nell, Duke, and Columbia.
Those are great choices. Yeah.
Yeah, many a times people would tell me, isn't it like too ambitious? Shouldn't you have like safety schools or something? But I feel when you put yourself into that safety net, you already start feeling, oh, I don't want to put my 100%
You-
when I do what I want to do.
I just want to take a quick segue there and let you know, safety schools, people have told me that as well when I was coming from the UK. I just applied to one school, and that was Riddle. That's it. If I didn't get it, I didn't get it. I didn't care. Luckily enough, Riddle's acceptance rate was horrible, so they accepted me. But that's a different story. But like in general, though, like that was the only school I wanted to go to from the UK when I applied. So I do understand that mindset, because you should never like think like you're over ambitious at all. If you have a plan, you should be going with it. But in general, though, like what was the motivation behind these 4 schools? Schools, like I know they are big school names and everything, but names are just names. But what was the reason behind? What motivated you to think about these 4 schools? What were the programs specifically that was like, okay, this is going to help me in my startup journey later on, or my journey with my entrepreneurship later on? What was that thing that motivated you?
So, personally, Stanford, because it was closer to Silicon Valley and they promote a lot of startup culture there.
Mhm.
Then I would say Cornell personally, because again, they have this, like, Cornell is in upstate New York. So there they are sort of in a bubble where you're forced to, work on things rather than just be distracted by the city noise.
Mhm.
So, and at the same time, Cornell has one of the oldest engineering programs. So you know that there is, a lot to learn as an engineer here. And Cornell has this huge network because it's also probably one of the youngest Ivies though, but still a lot of entrepreneurship focus which happens here. And also, as I mentioned, engineering, one of the oldest engineering schools comes from here. So and I would say thirdly, diversity part of it. So the first ever um women candidate to ever pursue a PhD was from Cornell.
Great. Okay,
So
didn't know that.
yeah, that was like a full circle moment again, wherein I was trying to promote women to pursue engineering, and here you already have a proof of, you know this college has done that before. So that sort of motivated me to come here, and again, an experience entirely different in itself.
Great. So what was the program that you were looking for in these 4 universities exactly for your masters?
So I wanted to pursue something which would help me develop my management skills and at the same time my engineering skills. So with regards to aerospace, many a times, because the industry is so specific to having citizens,
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I couldn't do my master's in aerospace because it would be difficult going ahead to navigate myself if I were to, work in the United States.
Hmm.
So, I didn't want to, just pursue my career in aerospace engineering, but in engineering for sure.
Hmm.
So I was looking at engineering management programs or something which is specific to management, but at the same time is an engineering program.
Hmm.
And so I started looking at these engineering management programs that made me pursue engineering management here at Cornell.
Okay. So that's the program. So I have done like like others like me and Ashwini and everybody, I guess back when we were graduating from our undergrads, I guess the only path for us to think about was just traditional engineering, and then figure out later on how to get a job or how to get into management after experience. Maybe that's the usual, like, at least in aerospace terms, like that's what the mentorship that at least I got was to do that for somebody who's actually looking forward for such a program, right? So for them to evaluate the differentials between like doing a master's in a traditional engineering versus a master's in a program which includes management in it, what do you think has been the biggest plus for you in that sense?
I would say I am not afraid to pitch my ideas to anybody, or just speak. When you are in a program where it is also you're still pursuing engineering, different engineering courses, but at the same time you also have to do management courses. It forces you to talk to people, to sort of convince them. And in the United States, you don't get jobs on campus, right? I mean, you have to put yourself out there. You have to sort of speak to people, try to convince them why you are the better one for the job. So it sort of helps in that aspect majorly. I wanted to be in touch with the engineering aspect, because now if you see everything, like every job that you do needs to be hybrid. Like it is a combination of AI with some role that you're adjacently doing, or it is a combination of being able to manage people with the aspect of technicality which you have to face. So it we have evolved from a stage where you could just do one thing, which is just engineering and being a software engineer or any sort of mechanical engineer, aerospace engineer, to becoming a manager, or somebody who is able to document things, somebody who's able to manage people, somebody who's able to definitely navigate through AI at this stage. Because all the industries are getting influenced. So now we are transitioning from a phase where we are just engineers or doing just one specific course to pursuing hybrid courses and exploring our options in that process.
Cool. Yeah, makes sense.
Is AI one of your one of the things you studied during the management course?
So, not specifically. I feel even colleges are now starting to transition and they include AI in their curriculum, because now, if you see, most students, well, they just use AI to do their assignments, which is not ideal. You don't learn as a person anything there. I'm trying to understand, because of COVID, as many people point out, this was something that I learned in my economics course here, that the growth rate of AI was accelerated because we were in this phase of COVID. And now we are at that stage where we have this great technology, but we don't know how to use it efficiently, or in a way, how do we include that in the different aspects that we face. So, um, colleges are still trying to adapt to that. So I did not have a very specific AI related course, but I was taking up different courses which are out there. So even project management can be done using AI at a scale where it is ethical, but at the same time, it is something that you can use and make your life easier and faster.
That's cool.
If I can add a bit of context here, uh, this is something that a professor of mine also sort of told me, where he said if you just study engineering as a silo, where you are only doing technical courses, your development will never be holistic and you will never be able to design something which is usable for the entirety of society. Because when you make something as an engineer, you are so concentrated on how it should work. You don't really pay attention to anything else apart from that. You have to have that knowledge of uh, economics, of project management, of a little bit of ethics, a little bit of legal, a little bit of who your user is going to be. How do they respond to technology? Otherwise, you get technology like facial recognition, which does not recognize a darker skin, or an automatic soap dispenser that does not recognize people with spotty hands. So you have to have this sort of holistic development where you are not only designing a product that actually works, but it also captures the entirety of the society that you are building something for. So you also have to answer that question: am I doing the right thing? Is this ethical? So I feel like this is where hybrid courses like the one that Shloka has done are a great sort of initiative, and they are a great upgrade to what sort of courses we did, which were I feel a little more siloed.
Yeah, I think also like engineering management is kind of very close to systems engineering. I think it's got a lot of parallels to systems engineering, where maybe me being a systems engineer does not care about economic side of things, but I surely care about the budgeting and the scheduling side of engineering management, right? So, like there is a lot of parallels to it, like being a jack of all trade sort of a thing, to get a project across the line and get it finished. So in that sense, I see the value of it. It's just that it never existed during my time, I guess, and now it's becoming like quickly a thing that is like a mainstream alternative to doing MBA.
Ashwini rightly pointed out that this is sort of like there is a cultural difference. So when I came here, I realized that as an engineer, when you think about it, you just think about a product because you love the product so much, but you forget to see that it should have an utility in people's lives. But when I came here, I realized you need to look at the problem 1st.
Mhm.
Your funding is very secondary. Your product building is also after there is a problem which exists. So I was made to think about that when I came here. And I feel you can raise funds. You can also probably build a product if you have the right set of people, or even you yourself put that efforts into learning something. But you need to understand people's problems first, even before you start loving your product. Because if you love your product, then even if you don't have any problem, or even if you don't have any solution for it, it's more like you'll just keep loving your product, developing it, and putting more resources in it.
That's interesting. So like, how do you think like going forward, right? Like, does like where do you think you see yourself like going forward, like in terms of the next 5 years, maybe? Like for me and you, for example, right now with this, H1B process, what do you think? How do you think you see your future like over here, or do you already like are thinking about plan Bs and plan Cs about your future?
So, yes, there is a looming cloud if you are an international. And it's not just, I would say, in the United States, but when I talk to people, I realize it's everywhere. And unless you're in your home country, it's everywhere, which you find as problem. It's in Europe, it's in the United States, North American region. So it there is a cloud everywhere. There are challenges, set of challenges and difficulties in terms of getting a job everywhere. Here with my masters, I was able to interact with a lot of senior professors, and like not just senior professors but professionals as well, senior partners at McKinsey or even CEO of Toyota, so things like that. And I spoke to them. I would ask them difficult questions and they would smile and say, like they would be happy that I asked them those difficult questions out there. But at the same time, navigating through this entire political landscape is sort of impeding being able to be hired even if you're talented. So thankfully right now we just got the verdict with regards to H1B, wherein right now it they mentioned somebody who's on F1 already, they are just transferring their status, so they don't have to incur that cost for companies. And this, like, it won't make things easier like just in an instance, but now companies would slowly and steadily start recognizing this, and probably things would get easier for people, like entirely.
Hmm. But do you see the future of aerospace being like better in the US or or in India? I mean, definitely, like I know the answer. Like US would be better if only the immigration situation was a bit easier. But in general, what do you think would be like? What would be your advice to your cohort, the younger folks coming in, who want to have this dream of having a great aerospace career? Should they still be looking forward to see things in India, or should they take that risk if they are passionate enough to come to the US and try for their careers over here?
So if I just discard the fact regarding visa situation, I would still say that you get to learn a lot here, in aerospace terms, because there are few technologies which you get to learn here. We are still in India, we are still reverse engineering a lot of things, which does not happen here. Here, you are made to think out of a concept, out of the box, which if you are someone who would be willing to just learn and go back to India, that is still like, if you're willing to put these resources and weigh the pros and cons and like go back to India, you can still do that. That is a way forward for sure. But when you weigh out the visa situation, it is tougher here to get a job in the industry itself, because it in a way makes sense also, because in aerospace industry, most things that you do, they are very confidential, um and sort of does not allow you to work here very like in detail or in depth as much as you like. But I feel India is like, they are like right now India is growing in the field, wherein ISRO recently launched this chip called Vikram. So we are trying to, make our own chips and not reverse engineer anymore, but build our own chips and own systems here, and even at a cheaper rate and at a cheaper cost. So I feel it is a great time to pursue your career in India for aerospace, but at the same time, you need to be like confident enough that you are willing to take that risk, because where there is passion, you would take that risk, but at the same time, there at the back of your mind, you always think, like, is it like worth it? I mean, at the end of it.
So I had one question for you. Where while you have your startup running, right? What is your thought process to also look for a job in the US? What are you hoping to gain from that? You know?
Really feel like there's a lot to learn from the culture here. Because right now, when I was working in India, I realized that I did not look at my own health per se. I just worked. And here people emphasize a lot on the health aspect of it. Um, in a way, it is good, and it makes you want to reevaluate the way you used to work. So I want to work here to learn from the people how that goes. I want to basically also, because here you see, like, there is a transition there are majorly service industries happening, but there is also a part of manufacturing that works here. And right now, India is a majorly service based sector. So I feel we need to grow that manufacturing aspect and grow manufacturing industries in India in order to sustain in the longer term. Yes, there is higher capital you need to invest when you are building manufacturing industries. But that, if you think long term, we are going to sustain only if we have manufacturing companies there. So I want to be able to learn from these manufacturing companies here in the United States, and I really want to l- contribute and see how I can better, get those processes and systems and understand them, and also put my skills out in those industries.
That's a business idea.
Yeah.
I will just say highest CAGR all over the world in the aviation and aerospace industry is in India right now.
Highest
Maximum
what? Sorry,
opportunities.
I didn't understand that.
CAGR.
What is
You
CAGR?
measure
Compounded
a
annual
business
growth
through
rate.
its compounded growth rate. Yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
highest in the world
This is why you
currently.
need economics, dude. This is why you need economics.
Dummy it down to me. I just problem solve.
Largest opportunity for indigenous manufacturing under the Make in India scheme launched by the Honorable Prime Minister, specifically in aviation and aerospace. The Honorable Aviation Minister has on multiple occasions now announced the manufacturing of the Saras Mk2, an indigenous airplane. So we are finally seeing a push from the regulators, a push from the government, a push from the private sector to just not only make the primary industries but also the secondary and tertiary industries.
So I would just say, as long as you're in any other country where you're still looking for jobs, if you don't get opportunities, create your own ultimately.
Exactly.
So right now, even though I am looking for full-time opportunities, I am willing to work in whichever industry that is out there so that I just learn. Um, at the same time, I work part-time as a product marketing, as a product marketing manager for a startup which is based in AI browser. At the same time, I enrolled myself. I just thought, because at one point I started questioning myself, am I good enough or what? So I realized if I'm not given opportunities, I would want to create my own opportunities.
So is that
So
something that you changed about yourself then? Like, is that one thing that you changed about yourself from the time you came here so that you could be adaptable more? Or is that something that you always thought that this would be a state that I have to go to, adapt, to, get into any industry? Or like, yeah, did this whole scenario change you basically?
I realized this like very quickly, that I'm going to grab whatever opportunity comes my way. So right now I am even enrolled in this startup residency program called Delta, wherein you have 3 week sprint, you pick a project and you work on it for 3 weeks. So I'm sort of working into a wearable safety device segment. I just had an idea, I'm working on it. So as long as you're already like, I'm already looking for jobs and I'm already doing something part-time, I still have this time on my hand which I don't want to waste. Anyways, I'm putting out resources, I'm putting in my time, might as well make use of it.
It's really nice.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So whether you acknowledge it or not, right? Having started a company, going abroad, coming from from a village to a city, studying abroad, you are definitely a role model to people who are watching this podcast. So, what challenges do you think shaped you to the person you are today? And to anyone else, whether they face similar challenges, or if they, if you know some challenges they might face, right? What is your advice to them?
So we always try to we are always told or tried to made to think about the bigger picture, think about the bigger picture, think about the bigger picture. But I feel when you are in times of adversities or in times of trouble, you just have to think about the next step you want to take. That sort of helps you even in difficult times. So there have always been instances where I've been in difficult times, be it being like people not trusting your capabilities, or being cancelled out because you were different from people or you had different opinion. So you always face these challenges, and especially at these times when I feel when I was doubting my own capabilities as well. In like, how do you do it? What do you do? You just think about the smaller steps. Don't think about the larger picture or how things might happen. In retrospective, things work out. So just take the next step that you feel is right.
Kind of reminds me of that Pixar movie Finding Dory, where she just says that just keep swimming. But it's an interesting insight, and honestly, it was a real educational talking to you. It's a great wrap up, and we would love to have you over again for for another episode of the podcast. Hopefully, the next time you're here, you are already leading a big company into doing some really cool work in this space.
Exactly.
And we will be following you. To anyone of the listeners who want to get in touch with you, we will drop in the links for your socials.
I am open to discussions with anybody, be it any sort of company, or be it any person who wants to still navigate or talk to me in terms of getting clarity. They can reach out to me through LinkedIn. I am super active on LinkedIn and I respond immediately.
I feel like we've had a really productive discussion today, and yeah, let's carry these thoughts forward, and we'll see all of y'all again in another episode.
Yep.
Hopefully
So
sometime soon.
Yeah.
definitely, yeah. Thank you guys.
And maybe if Shloka wants to talk about something else on the podcast, she can in the future. At the same time, if our listeners want some insight from her, let us know in the comments.
Yep, definitely.
So yeah,
Thank you guys for watching. I think we had a great episode.
you.
And yep, that's a wrap. See you guys in the next one. And please don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much.
yeah, especially the people who liked me a lot.
That's his policy. So let him live in that. All right. See you guys. Thank you so much.
Peace.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.